Steve, it's my honor to present to you the Jim and Lynn Moroney Award for 2011.
You know, having done some public speaking, it's always hard to get up after somebody goes before you and gives a really funny, moving speech. I'm just glad that didn't happen tonight. I never thought that Channel 8 would believe me. Mrs. Glasheen is here tonight. We had a carpool. It was Miller, Johnson, Glasheen, and Rasch, and I remember looking out in horror the next morning when I looked out and I just saw wet roads. No snow, no ice, just rain. So I quickly called Kevin Glasheen, because we had all been in touch the night before about this particular episode, although for some reason they figured I was the one that could best imitate Father Dennis. So that's my story, that's my defense. But I remember calling Miss Glasheen in the morning and said, can I please speak to Kevin? And she said, well, I didn't wake him up. School's canceled today. I said, no, it's not. About a third of the school didn't show up that day, and I'm just glad to contribute to the process that we have in place today to prevent such shenanigans from ever happening in the future. You know, when I received the phone call from Father Peter telling me I'd been selected to receive the Moroney Award this year, I had a couple of thoughts right away. My first thought was, does he think I'm in the class of 1974? I can't possibly look as old as those guys. My second thought was, what is the statute of limitations under canon law for impersonating a Hungarian headmaster? I started thinking of what my lawyer training, I started thinking of what my defense would be to these charges, and so I came up with a trial theme, which is, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I quickly realized that one might not sell when we're talking about adolescent boys and Hungarian monks, so I decided next to just keep it simple and just ask for forgiveness. I figured that if the school could allow Peter Collins to serve as the chaperone for the Texas History field trip, the school is willing to forgive anything. I really appreciate everything the development office did tonight, putting this together and cataloging some of the things that I've done in my lifetime, but there is a glaring omission. I wanted to let you know that I have been selected as the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Men Who Married Over Their Heads Society. I want to make sure you get that in. I don't know how Ed got out of this tonight, actually. I don't really believe the slip and fall story, but I will tell you that Ed has always been an incredible negotiator. And somehow he got Mike roped into doing this so Ed could avoid coming here and facing what he knew was coming, because I would get to speak second. But Ed's always had this skill, and even though he's not here, I'm sure some of the stories will wind their way back to him, so I want to tell one. We were late for a Notre Dame game one time, and we couldn't find a parking spot, and so Ed was desperate. Ed loves Notre Dame football. We were trying to find a parking spot, and Ed looked up and said, "Dear Lord, if you'll just open up a parking spot, I'll never touch a drop of whiskey again." Miraculously, a spot opened up. Ed pulled into it, looked up and said, never mind, Lord, I found one. Father Abbot, members of the Cistercian clergy, alumni and friends, it is my tremendous honor and privilege to be selected as the 19th recipient of the Jim and Lynn Moroney Award. This is the first year that neither Jim nor Lynn Moroney has been with us, and as we take time tonight to celebrate what Cistercian means to all of us, let us reflect on the tremendous contributions of Jim and Lynn Moroney and the other founding families of Cistercian, who, along with the Cistercian fathers, started with an idea that has grown into a vital institution in the Dallas Catholic community. In the fall of 1972, 2 years after Cistercian saw its first graduating class, my parents had the foresight to enroll me as a first former at Cistercian. I was not entirely on board with this decision, as it caused me to leave friends and girls behind at St. Monica. I had no way of knowing at the time the transformational impact that my parents' decision would have on the rest of my life. In that fall of 1972, we were a group of 30 boys thrown together by fate, by our parents' belief in a nascent school, and by decidedly less rigorous admission standards than what we have today. God teaches us to love our neighbors. He also teaches us to love our enemies. As Cistercian middle schoolers, we learned these were the same people. We celebrated our differences by tormenting each other in a variety of creative ways. As an example, whenever we had a particularly difficult test, one of our classmates usually paid the price by receiving a ceremonial wedgie. A few of our classmates who were frequent targets started coming to school commando as a defensive measure. We were friends, we were rivals, we were members of cliques, and at bottom, we were insecure kids who sometimes thought we had to get the best of one another to get ahead. One of the many lessons we would learn at Cistercian is that no one must fail that I may succeed. In a world without iPods, cell phones, laptops, or the internet, we found ways to entertain ourselves. The Cistercian faculty provided a target-rich environment for mischief in those days. Whether it was confetti eggs exploding over the head of Father James as he tried to teach us Herodotus, or if it was a quacking duck, a live duck in the back of the classroom concealed from the teacher's view, or even sprinkling a malodorant, inaptly named Morning Breeze, on the garb of an unsuspecting monk. We found many ways to celebrate and to create disruption. But the monks in those days had an arsenal of weapons at their disposal. To combat our unruliness, we faced chalk flying across the room with pinpoint accuracy from Father Melchior, Father Bernard's yardstick, and even Father Henry's funny little twig. The fathers had their methods of keeping us in line. In the midst of all this revelry, we learned a great deal about our school subjects and even more about life itself. Somehow, even then, we knew that these were some of the best years of our lives. We enjoyed a great deal of freedom with comparatively few responsibilities. I think we all realized at the time that the lines of freedom and responsibility would never intersect in that same quadrant of our lives again. And through it all, we were guided by our form master, Father Henry Martin. He was a gentle man with towering faith. For 8 years, we shadowed a man who closely adhered to the path that God sets out for each of us. Having spent time around Father Henry is no guarantee that we will be able to walk this path, but none of us who had Father Henry as a form master can say that we do not know the way. Jim spoke earlier about humility being the characteristic of the school, and no one fit that better than Father Henry. Father Henry showed us that humility is not defined by self-deprecating attitudes, but rather by the esteem with which we regard others. We learned from Father Henry that humility is not thinking less of oneself, it is thinking of oneself less. Father Henry had a kind way of addressing our shortcomings. If a student received warning reports in 4 subjects with 3 F's and 1 D, Father Henry would say to the student, "Man, you may be spending too much time on one subject." Father Henry quietly placed his gifts at the service of the church and the formation of young men. Father Henry is gone now, but his footprints remain in the sands of our lives. I wish I could say that I've always maintained a 4.0 average in the classroom of life, but I haven't. Cistercian provides a reservoir of understanding, not only in times of affirmation like this evening, but in times of great challenge. The school and the Abbey have been part of the soundtrack of my life for almost 40 years. As I traverse through middle age, I do not know if I've quite reached that tipping point where nostalgia overtakes anticipation. But I do know this: when I'm around my classmates, we are all 17 again, waiting for our lives to begin, filled with the comfortable optimism of unlimited possibilities. When we look at each other, we see seniors in high school, even as the mailings from AARP remind us that we are a year away from being just plain seniors. What adds to this feeling is that so many of those who taught us 35 years ago look nearly the same today. The priests, as well as lay faculty members such as Coach Hauser, all seem to benefit from Cistercian's Fountain of Youth. One quick look around this room provides a sharp rebuttal to any argument that this Fountain of Youth is accessible to alumni. I want to take this opportunity tonight to thank my parents for starting me on this journey. The cross of Christ taught us that the measure of love is sacrifice. In the fall of 1972, my father was a 33-year-old engineer with 4 children ages 10 and younger. My parents made the sacrifices necessary to provide me, my brother, my 2 sisters the best education possible. Some gifts are meant not to be repaid, but rather to be passed on. Were it not for what my parents gave to me, my son Chase might not be a student in Form 5 right now. In thinking about the words that I would say this evening, I've reflected on what makes Cistercian different and special to all its alumni. Brendan Kennelly, an Irish poet often quoted by U2, has said, "If you want to serve the age, betray it." The Cistercians live out their countercultural vision. The Cistercians live out their countercultural vision with joy as witnesses to a world that is increasingly resistant to immutable truth. We live in an age where knowledge is everywhere, but wisdom is elusive. By combining Christian belief with intellectual pursuit, a Cistercian education speaks to the head and to the heart. It asks students to work for the good of all of us and then shows them how to do it. Although I'm tremendously appreciative of receiving this award tonight and certainly have no plans to give it back, I feel that my involvement at Cistercian has been a mile wide and an inch deep. If there is one aspect of Cistercian alumni work that I feel most strongly about, it is raising funds for scholarships to the school. I would like to characterize my approach to fundraising as one that is vigorous but not ruthless.
Nice try, Steve.
If I have ever crossed that line over to the territory of ruthlessness, it's because I cannot help thinking that a few more gifts or a few more donations or a few more increased donations might make the difference for one more boy to be able to attend Cistercian. The Alumni Scholarship Drive brings to mind the familiar story of the starfish thrower. Starfish thrower involves a little girl who came along the beach and saw thousands of starfish that had been washed up on the sand at low tide. She began to pick up starfish one by one and toss them into the ocean. An inquisitive old man came up to her and said, "Young lady, there are thousands of starfish on this beach. You can't possibly make a difference." To which she replied, after throwing another starfish into the ocean, "I just made a difference to that one." When I think about that one additional boy that might benefit from a few additional donations from alumni, the face that I see is my own. I was able to attend Cistercian in part because of my parents' sacrifice, but also because I was the recipient of a half scholarship. I know firsthand the ripples that can be created by the generosity of others. In this room are some of Cistercian's most generous and committed benefactors. When you donate to the Alumni Scholarship Fund, you are not just giving money, you are changing lives one at a time. In closing, let me just say that whatever time I have spent on Cistercian projects, I've been getting, not giving. I will be forever grateful for the opportunities that have allowed me to remain close to Cistercian. Cistercian's first 50 years are rich in history and accomplishment, but I firmly believe that Cistercian is even richer in promise and potential. May we all be worthy heirs to this great institution. Thank you very much.